Do you ever practice a simple breathing exercise? Does it do anything for you? I think for me, it feels really like a reset button. Feelings will come and feelings will go. It will only get stronger when we are clinging on to it. Welcome to Hello Kindness. Today, I want to share the 4 levels of mindfulness. I want to explore with you, and if you find this intriguing or helpful, I would love to hear your comment. Okay, so the first level of mindfulness is mindfulness of our body. The second level is mindfulness of our feelings. The third level is mindfulness of our mind activities, our thoughts. The fourth level is mindfulness of phenomena, universal principles that teaches us how things work. So the first level, mindfulness of our body. I would explain it, or to my own personal experience, is using our body to stay present. For example, many practice or meditation tell us to attend to our breath, use our breath to bring us back to the present. And it is really true. I've been practicing meditation for many years. It's something that if you don't do a formal sit-down meditation, you can simply just observe how you breathe, just like this. Noticing the air goes in and out through my nose. So when you do this, you will notice as you practice, you're able to come back to the present, and that it gives you a sensation of being grounded, staying grounded, and really able to come back to the present moment. I think for me, when I get busy or there's a lot to do, if I'm able to remember and just use my breath to come back to the present moment, it feels really like a reset button. What about you? Do you ever practice a simple breathing exercise? Does it do anything for you? If you just spend a moment right now to attend to your breath, just like this. Do you sense there's like a shift within you, that you're able to notice what's going on at the present moment? We can also use other things to help us being present. For example, if we use our ears just to tune into what we can listen. Maybe your environment right now, you're able to listen to something else. And I'll tell you, I'm able to listen to the air condition since I'm recording in my car right now. I can also hear some birds in the neighborhood. So when you tune into what you're able to listen, you're also coming back to the present moment. Okay, so level 2, mindfulness of our feelings. To me, I think feelings are categorized in 3 different categories: pleasant feelings, neutral feelings, or unpleasant feelings. Many times it is a little bit more difficult, I think, if we have not been practicing any form of mindfulness. It's hard for us to be mindful of our feelings, because it's very natural, especially when there are some strong emotions like anxiousness, something unpleasant going on. We oftentimes fall into that feelings. We become that feelings. It feels like we become that feelings. But the teaching in the second level of mindfulness, being mindful with our feelings, is just treat that feelings or emotions just like another object. For example, when we're able to attend to our breath, we are also able to attend to our feelings, simply noticing that feelings that is happening, but not judging them. I'll use an example. I remember one time from a long day of work, came home for dinner, and after dinner, there's a lot of things going on that day, and then usually I do the dishes too. So it's like a normal day. The kids, sometimes they help, but at that time they went to do all their go back to do their things, maybe play games, etc. So I feel like during the time that I washed my dishes, it was after a long day of work. I felt like, oh, how come I have to do all this? There's a feeling of resentment or a form of complaint, a feelings of unpleasantness. Okay. But at that time, maybe it's because that I've been practicing mindfulness. I also noticed that feelings that was happening within me, but I'm not judging it. And then I was able to see that all that feeling naturally comes and it naturally goes. I wasn't clinging onto it. So I think a big part of mindfulness is treating any emotions as it comes and not clinging onto it. And you can see how this works. Feelings will come and feelings will go. It will only get stronger when we are clinging on to it. So if you spend a moment right now thinking about your life journey, are there any special feelings or challenging feelings, anything that you are constantly going through? Maybe practicing mindfulness will help you see those feelings as just another object, and so that you're not completely carried away by that feelings. Sitting with feelings doesn't always have to be something unpleasant, because it is something that we are more likely talk about to help people deal with their unpleasant feelings. But at the same time, there are also pleasant feelings that we can attend to, be mindful of, that will also help us understand how it works. For example, I always like to use example. I remember one time I was eating shabu shabu, at a dinner, with my family, with my children, and my wife. And then we're all having a good time, enjoying the food and also, talking stories, sharing what we have done on that day. And I noticed this feeling of happiness, this a very pleasant joy. It wasn't like a fancy food or anything. It's just the environment that, I was having this good time with my kids and also with my wife, sharing stories and talking. I sense that sensation within me, the sensations that it is so joyful, and I'm appreciating that moment. So I didn't really cling on to it, but I noticed that feelings happening within me. So again, this is also example of how we can be mindful of our feelings, because we can easily fall into the stream of feelings, like we're completely immersed into it and not knowing it that it's there. So the second level of mindfulness teach us that we can be mindful of our feelings, either they're unpleasant or pleasant. And through practices, we can understand how our life journeys work and just give us a more perspective and what is important to us. So the third level of mindfulness is the mindfulness of our mind, our thought patterns, our thinking activities, of all the stories that we created for ourselves. I think through meditation, especially as we gain through that practice, we're able to see our thoughts as such thoughts. They do not represent who we are. We do not need to identify them. But I also understand that sometimes it's difficult because we are not aware of them. We fall into the stream of thoughts. I think especially nowadays with so much information, sometimes we immerse into our thoughts, and without knowing it, we become our thoughts. We have this misunderstanding that our thoughts are our identity. So if we can take a moment and kind of look through your life, your current life, and just think about it. Have we fall into the trap of our own thought patterns, making us believe that our thoughts are who we are? In a way, if we are unconscious of it, we have a tendency to become of our thoughts, because you also have heard of the saying, you are who you think you are, right? If you constantly put energy into those thinking, naturally those thinkings become stronger. And if you are unaware of it, you become who you think you are. Okay. So for example, if we constantly trying to cheat people in life. Okay, if you always trying to wish something bad happened to someone, sometimes you might not even know that you are thinking like that, right? But in your mind, if you have those thought patterns, let's say you want to, gain advantage over people, when that those thinking patterns continue to develop, you actually become a personality like that, right? So the reason that if we're able to see our thoughts as just thoughts, then we become more conscious of them, then you're able to choose consciously what you want to do in your life instead of living your life unconsciously. So I think in the third level of mindfulness, being mindful with all the activities in our mind is to help us become a better version of ourselves. When we're able to be mindful of our thoughts, we then do not fall into the stream of thoughts. I'll use another example. I go to golf. I remember as I gain through um, the practice of meditation, I start to notice more thinking patterns. This aligns with what some of the teachings about integrating our shadows. Sometimes we don't even know. We don't even know we might have certain thinking patterns or thought patterns. But the example that I talk about going golf. So in a friendly tournament with friends, you may be betting on something. So remember, I noticed that when my friend starts, it was a very close game, and at his turn to maybe make a putt, I notice I have a thought pattern that I want him to miss. And then when you think about it, as a human nature, those thinking pattern is quite normal, that you are competing with that person. Maybe you have a thought that you want him to miss the putt so that you can win, right? Okay. But does that mean that you're like a bad person, that you want him to miss the putt so that you can win? So it's a little contradicting, right? You want to win, but you want him to miss, right? So when we do not hold ourselves like so tight and just notice the thought as just like a passing cloud, then it will come and then it will go. And then I think this is a good example because in our daily lives, there's so many things going on, and sometimes we just are not conscious of what we think. Okay. But on the other hand, if wishing someone to perform bad is constantly a part of your life and you're not aware of it, then that might become a problem, right? So I think the teaching of the mindfulness of our mind is that we become more aware of our thinking patterns, and we will notice them when they become more prominent and they become something that we need to attend to. So I think when we are able to be mindful of our thinking patterns, in a way, it leads us to a life that we can make better choices. The fourth level of mindfulness is the mindfulness of phenomena. And there are two emphases I want to share. Mindfulness of phenomena, one big part is change. Like the world is constantly changing. And if we can pay attention, we will notice that even as we take in a breath and breathe out, there is a constant change in that. When I take in that air, there's a process of change that it converts oxygen into carbon dioxide. To me, I think two big part about mindfulness of the phenomenon is understanding change and understanding interconnectedness. So there are two things. I think change is easier to understand, but often that overlooked, because we all know that change is the only constant, right? As you walk, there are changes, right? As you take one step, another step. So one step is gone, one step becomes the past, and then you take another step that becomes the present, right? So we know this change. See, by simply walking, you notice the change. Breathing. As I take in breathing, breathe in and breathe out, there are a lot of changes within our body as well. Relationships that we have with our loved ones, with our friends, there are constantly changes. Especially if we have some relationships that we often regret. Maybe we have said something. Sometimes maybe we have said something and then the relationship is broken. So that has changed. So by talking to you like this, I think we can all reflect on our life and notice so many changes are happening every single day. But I think the principle of why it is important to be mindful of change, because it's happened. The trouble is when good things happen to us, maybe we are healthy, we have good relationship, we have a good job, making good money. When we cling on to it, believing that it might be forever, okay, although it's human nature that we want them to stay forever, but sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. I think by teaching us that the phenomenon of change helps us to realize that and be ready when change happens, we are more equipped to handle and manage the changes. I think that's a big part because it is by nature that change always happens. And the second emphasis is the phenomena of interconnectedness. We're so interconnected because think about 30 or 40 years ago, I couldn't be recording this content and then upload it, and then so many people can see it in an instant, right? By that way, we can see that we're so interconnected. Okay, change happen and make us even more interconnected, right? By a way of our thinking, there is a form of interconnectedness to you too, because if I think of something and I record it and you're able to see it, you can see how interconnected we are. And sometimes we overlook this kind of phenomena because we are so busy with our lives. But in a way, when we start to understand how interconnected we are, we become more compassionate. We become more showing more empathy towards each other and loving for ourselves as well. I think as we realize that we are so much interconnected, more than we even think, then we become more caring for each other, so that we understand that we're all part of a whole. Then we understand that we need each other to make the world a better place. I think the phenomena of interconnectedness is help us to be more mindful of ourselves and how, no matter how small our effort is, it can make a big impact because we all is a part of a whole. So that's all. That's the 4 levels of mindfulness. You don't have to practice everything at once, but I think it is greatly beneficial if we can spend a moment just to reflect on these 4 levels and how they're applicable to you. Maybe you can start with being mindful with our body, practicing very simple meditation. In my channel, I have shared in many ways how we can meditate, and I hope that will serve you well if you are interested in starting meditation and become more mindful with our body. Because I think through the first level of mindfulness, when we start to attend to our breath, we become more equipped to be more mindful with our feelings, with our thoughts, and looking our world and understanding the great teachings of being mindful with some universal phenomena. So I would love to hear your feedback. If you find this content very helpful or slightly helpful, I would love you to click on that like button, even subscribe, because this will help the algorithm on YouTube to pass it along, and so many more people have the opportunity to see it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.